Boom.
Boom is right.
Welcome everybody out there in Facebook land. My name is Judah Hoover. This guy right here is Josh Weidman. And that guy over there is a good friend of mine, Chris Good. He is a rock star. Though one of the greatest things about Chris Good is he does not think he's a rock star. He is a super humble individual. And it's one of the things that I really like about him. So we come to you every Thursday with a great interview. And, Chris has been, so I run a real estate investors club. Chris has been coming and been a student of mine for about 10 years now, 15 years. How long have we known each other, Chris?
So I probably started coming to your meeting about 5 years ago or so.
Is that it? Yep. I thought it was a lot longer than that.
Can you hear me okay?
And yeah, we can hear you fine. There's just a little bit of a delay. So, but when you started, you had like, when you first started coming, you had like, 3 or 4 properties. And now you've got like, we don't have to get into exact numbers, but you've got like, 20, 25, something like that. You've got a whole pile of properties now. And you're doing pretty good for yourself. And I just kind of wanted to have you on to talk about that.
Yeah, well, thank you. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, Chris, I always like to start these conversations by kind of getting an idea of like, how'd you get involved in real estate? Like, what was it about real estate that you were like, yep, this is what I want to do? How did you, take the first step in buying your first property? And then, like, what are you doing now? And let's talk about the journey along the way.
Okay, sure. So I'm not sure where it came from, but I feel like I always kind of had an interest in real estate.
Yeah.
So with that being said, when I was 19, I had some money to invest. I bought a fourplex. I just kind of sat on that for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And after those 4 or 5 years, I started attending meetings like Judah's, learning from folks that are had a whole lot more than I had. And
wait a second, Chris. You just one day woke up, crawled out of bed, and you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna buy 4 units today." And just rolled down, and you're like, "That house, that one looks good right there." Like, come on. I mean, most people when they like, did you buy a primary residence before you bought your fourplex, or was the fourplex your first introduction here?
Yeah, my fourplex was my first introduction. I actually, okay. I mean, I had a budget, so I was looking at stuff on actually LoopNet. I found it on LoopNet.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I'm answering your questions here, but it was actually a fourplex in Harrisburg, not too far from where Judah's meeting is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm joking around because I know. So people look at real estate for a long time before they buy it, right? It's not like you're an old guy and you've been kicking around for 20 years and just kind of decided one day finally the stars aligned. Like you had you were driven towards real estate. It sounds like, or at least you had a little bit of an idea that, hey, maybe I can make some money doing this, or had some extra money. Did you just have extra money laying around when you bought the first deal, or what? Let's dig into that first, because that always fascinates me. Like my first several deals were awful failures, and like I wasn't smart enough to like wait until they were failures to like jump into the next one. So finally, by the time it all panned out, I had some winners, but like, how do you just go buy a 4-unit building first?
Yeah. So I was pretty frugal. I didn't spend money where it wasn't necessary, I guess, or at least I tried not. And just over several years, I was able to accumulate the down payment.
Okay.
And I bought it, just putting the 20% down and bank financing for the rest. So, yeah.
Were you saving up for that down payment? Like, did you have a certain amount of money that you wanted to put aside, or was it like, oh, this is getting to be a sizable sum, let's put it somewhere, and real estate's the way to go?
Yes, it's more just, okay, I think I could put this somewhere that would be useful. And I decided to put it in real estate. So
okay.
And you were still, I mean, I don't want to there's no shame in this, but like you were still living at your parents' home when you bought your first rental property, right, Chris?
Yes. Yep. Yeah. So I
Sure.
didn't have any. I wasn't paying any mortgage, any
Yeah.
rent. It was pretty easy
Yeah.
to save up. But yeah, that's a good.
I
thing to
want to
point
get
out.
my son in here. I want to get my oldest son in here because like I've been preaching to him from like, before he went to elementary school, like, listen, save your money, like get a really good job. And I'm all against the college education path. That's a total different aside. But like I love that. I love that. You bought your first
Well, yeah,
apartment.
I mean, think about it. He's a a guy in his 18, 19. He's just saving up all his money. He
Yeah.
realizes he's sitting on a chunk of money, and he should do something smart with it. And so he goes out and buys a rental property while he still lives at home. And I think that's awesome. And so then, Chris, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but then you go out there, you buy your own house, you get married, you have a kid or two, all before you buy your next investment property, right?
So we actually just had our first child about a year ago. Her birthday's on Saturday.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I was able to build it up, my portfolio up pretty good before we had our first child, which was nice.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But you didn't buy investment property number 2 until after marriage and after purchase of a primary residence, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. So
But still, you had that 4 unit just throwing off cash for you, and so that was good. And you went out there and you had you had a job in construction.
I did.
As a foreman that was giving you some flexibility, and you just recently quit your job. I'm just trying to give the headlines here before we dig down into how this happened. So you've recently gone to like you're only working 50% of the time or 20% of the time for them. You're pretty much full time now. Yes or no?
That's correct. I actually quit in June for that construction company. Yeah, they treated me really well there. They gave me the flexibility to take off when I needed to do what I was doing, building my portfolio. But yeah, in June, I said, I think I have enough going that I can make a living off of it. So
that's great. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So, all right, let's talk about this gap of a couple years, right? What you were just grinding, right? I mean, it sounds like, okay, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. And if I do, shut me up. All right. So, but it sounds like, like you started working and saving money. You were frugal with the money that you made, so you saved it. And at some point, still with low expenses, you said, you know what, I got enough money here. Why don't I buy a piece of real estate? Here's a 4-unit apartment building. Start with that one. And then all of a sudden life goes on and you decide to get married, and you get married and you buy a house. And maybe all that money that you had been saving before went towards those type of expenses. Am I fairly close? Okay, great. And then like now you're back, you've been back on track. It sounds like for quite a few years now that you're really, that you built up this portfolio.
Yeah. And I have to give a lot of credit to other people. And Judah's one of them, folks that were running meetups. I've met some folks at those meetups that have been very helpful. Giving me advice where I needed it. So yeah, I can't take all the credit.
Oh, come on. You learned from other people, but you listened and you put it into action, Chris. And your humility is what's always been amazing to me. And again, I hate talking about numbers because numbers are very deceiving. You can own 20 units that, are rented for $5,000 a month, or 20 units that are rented for $500 a month, or depending on how they're leveraged or, not leveraged, you can make numbers sound funny, but like, I remember, thinking you had 4 or 5 units, and you look young. I mean, I'm 41, so I'm like 35 at the time. And I'm like, who's this, young kid in his 20s, he's got a couple units. That's great. And then like I talked to you one time and I was like, Chris, let's you and I talk, like, this is like 2 years ago, something like that. like, Chris, like, how many units do you have now? And you like told me like 25 or something like that. And you've since bought some. And like, how old are you now, Chris?
I'm 28.
28. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
Basically, and also,
wait, he's retired at 28.
Yeah, retired at 28. Isn't that great?
Kudos, man.
But here's the other thing.
I want to be you when I grow up.
Chris's parents didn't like give him, $200,000 to go invest with. Chris didn't day trade in the stock market to earn a bunch of money to go invest. Chris hasn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but you've done some flips. But like, of your 25 units, you've only done like a flip or two or a wholesale or two, and you haven't done a whole bunch of creative financing. Mostly what you've done is worked hard, saved money, bought, put 20% down, bought a piece of real estate, took the cash flow from that, saved more money. Like you've done it very traditionally, correct?
So I've done 2 flips and a wholesale deal. As far as the last couple of years, as far as how I bought them, I was pretty much using what they call the BRRRR strategy. I'm sure you're familiar with that term.
Yeah.
Buy, rehab, refinance, repeat.
Right.
So that's how I've acquired probably 20 of the units. So.
Okay. Well, that's good though.
Creative financing.
A little bit of creative financing, using some hard money. The point that I want to make for people, I don't mean to cut you off, Chris. This delay is kind of bugging me here a little bit. The point that I want to make for people is you don't have to be a financial wizard to come up with creative, complicated structures. And you don't have to have a bunch of cash infusion from other people. And you don't have to be a really strong negotiator and get, seller financing or whatever. If you're disciplined and live below your means and execute your plan, just traditionally real estate investing, you can be retired in no time with 20 some units. Is that what you're hearing, Josh? Are you hearing the same thing there?
I'm hearing that too. But there's some interesting things about your story that I'd like to explore. I mean, the first of which is how young you are. Okay. And I want to explore this specifically as the landlord who's 28 is probably knocking on some doors of some people that might be parents' age or your grandparents' age. And you're like, yo, buddy, give me your rent, tell us some crazy stories that and interactions that you've had with people. I mean, do you manage these yourself?
I do manage it myself. I don't actually knock on doors for rent payments. Most of that's all done through a software that I use. But yeah, a common question I get is, so who's the landlord?
Right.
So I get that. Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's not uncommon to rent to folks that are older than me, but what I feel is, and some people have a little bit of a problem with that, but if you treat them right, why, it usually works out.
Yeah. Okay. So oftentimes when you've got somebody who's retired at 28, they're usually worked in the software field, right? Or like they developed some new piece of software, they made all this money, and then they retired. You did this working construction without a college degree. Am I following that right?
Yeah, that's right. Dude,
I want my son to come and he's just going to follow you around all day long. All day. This is what I've been telling him. It's like, look, a lot of times we go and we pursue stuff like a college degree because we don't know what else we're supposed to do, right? And if you have a plan, it's like, if you don't know what to do, just go make money. Like, just go to work, save your money, live at home. And then if you figure out, hey, I want to be a doctor, awesome. Go to med school, go to college, whatever. But like, I love this story. I love this story so much. It's great. So talk to me. Let's talk about the rehabs. So you use the Burr method. You buy these things. You've got some of your cash in there. What are you doing with the renovations? Have you kind of transitioned from rehabbing or doing construction work on somebody else's property to yours? Is that
on these properties you did the Burr method with, Chris? You didn't do the rehab, right? You just managed the rehab.
So most of them I'm pretty involved. Yes, so I will do some of the rehab. Actually, the last few have been a lot of the rehab. So saying I'm retired is a stretch. I'm still pretty hands on.
Yeah.
What was the other question, Josh?
Well, so it's like, all right, let's talk about the renovations, right? You said you're very hands-on.
Okay,
so
yeah.
I'm kind of a hands-on project manager, but I'm not like a hands-on, actual do the work kind of guy, unless I either want to or have to, right? But the plan going in, it's
Sure.
like, if I know I've got to pay somebody $1.50 to put down floors, I get a budget $1.50, even though I might want to do it on a Saturday and save myself, $1,500 or $2,000. That's a choice. But it's different if I'm building in my time into the project. So I guess what I'm asking is, from your side, like, it's really easy to get trapped as a contractor in a position where you have to do the work to make the deal work. And like, sometimes that it's worth it, but a lot of times that's an uncomfortable spot to be in, having to actually get up out of bed in the morning, especially when you're making, from all these rental properties, you're probably making $1 million a month,
I wish.
Yeah, right.
But yeah.
So Josh's question, let me summarize it for you, is, are you involved from a project management perspective in the rehab, or are you involved in a hammer swinging perspective in the rehab?
So I've been pretty involved in the hammer swinging part of the rehab. Now I am trying to step away from that. Obviously, the more units you have, the busier you get. So you just can't do all the work.
Sure.
But I don't enjoy sitting at home either. So if I have the time to do it, I'll do it.
Right. Well, you got to do something during the day, right? What do you sit around in your underwear and watch TV all day? I think we lost you.
Can you hear me now?
We got this. Say your last 2 sentences again.
Okay, so what I was going to say, to Josh's point, it is good to have figured in your budget the cost of having somebody else do the work.
Mm-hmm.
It is, not a fun position to be in. That the only way to make the rehab work is if you go out there and do it. That's
right.
That's not fun either to have to do it. It's a lot more fun if you can do it.
Yeah, what you end up with in those type of situations is you have, you make $20,000 on a rehab project that takes you 4 months, and during that 4 months, you could have made $40,000 working on somebody else's project, and it's like, what just happened here? It's got to work both ways. You got to make the income and the profit if you're going to work on the job. So
that's
anyway.
right. That's right. Yep.
Yeah. I want to say something here. I want to ask a question. So Chris, you and I, both good, Mennonite boys or half Mennonite boys here from Lancaster County. I kind of grew up feeling that I was worked too hard, and that I was basically an indentured servant around the house.
I thought Mennonites had more kids.
Yeah, I mean, like my mom said, we didn't hire a maid; I had kids.
Right.
So, like, Chris, you as well had a work. I like how Daryl says. Daryl was just on with us like 2 weeks ago, and what did he say? I learned of my work ethic totally against my will from my father. Something like that. So you similarly, Chris, would say that you learned a hard work ethic growing up, right? Chris, we lost you.
Yeah, I think we lost you. All right, so Chris, hopefully we come back. Judah, it's so funny because I have had so many. It's so funny when you talk about being a kid, right?
Right.
And like how you learn to work. And like I remember my first day of work, I was so looking forward to it. And like I couldn't wait to have my first job and this and that. And I got dropped off at this farm and I was making $4.15 an hour. And like the first job is like, hey, we're gonna drink or we're gonna go pick blueberries today. And they're like, oh, picking blueberries sounds like fun. Sounds like something you do with your family on a Saturday.
It sounds like a leisurely time.
Yeah. And then they're like, yeah, fill this pail up before lunch. You're like, what? You ever pick blueberries? They're this big. And then that was one day. And then they drop you off at the barn and tell you to stack the straw and the hay for a day in 400 degree, whatever. But like those are the things I look back on, and it's like all the other stuff we've been doing, that's easy.
Right. You just show up and work. You just work. You don't have to work super fast or super hard, but you just work. And there's so many people in real estate investing who they get into real estate investing to be lazy, or they think it's going to be easy or something like that. And you've got to actually actively work this business if you want to have results. And that's what I was hoping. Unfortunately, man, we just had a really rough connection there with Chris. So we apologize for that, dear listeners. We're trying to get him back. But that's the thing is, him being as young as he is and doing this as traditionally as he is, hopefully that gives some people some hope and some motivation that, if you just live your life a little bit differently for a time and you just set aside some money for a time, you can do this differently, and you can have a different outcome in life. And then what's great is as you get more properties, it becomes easier and easier to get more properties.
Right.
And then it becomes easier and easier, and then becomes easier. It's like pedaling downhill. You know what I mean? Like the hardest property you ever buy is the first one. Right. And then you try something new, and that's the hardest, because every time you duplicate it, you learn something, even if you fall flat on your face. I mean, you're Judah, you're preaching, man. It's great. I think it's amazing. So I've had a bunch of coaching clients throughout the years, right? The most successful clients that I've worked with have been people that have blue collar jobs that give them flexibility of schedule. Like firefighters are like the best, because they've got great, like they get paid well for doing what they're doing. They've got a decent life, but with the freedom of time, these guys they rock it out. I mean, it's really interesting to see with that, but like, you're right. You live a certain way for a short period of time, you can live however you want forever. Right. And I think that the only thing that limits you is you. That sounds so cliche, but here's a kid who decides I'm not going to go to college. I've been saving up my money. I've been very frugal. I don't care that at 19 I'm still living with mommy and daddy. Like, how many of us wanted to move out? I moved out when I was 18. You know what I mean? Like, I was ready to go be an adult. Chris, still very much an adult, still very much a mature individual, but decides, you know what, I'm going to stay at home. He was probably still working really hard on the family farm. Decides I'm going to stay at home, keep my expenses low. I don't care if my friends or girls or say whatever about me. I'm going to keep my expenses low so that I can go out and buy a rental property, so that if anything goes wrong with that rental property, I've got some flexibility in my budget.
Right.
And now I've got 4 units just pooping out money to me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And it's 80% leverage.
Right.
I mean, and it's probably not a huge a dollar amount.
Right.
But that's great. That's huge.
Yep.
Right. I think we have Chris back here. Let's add him in here. Chris,
are you with us? Can you hear us, buddy? He can't hear us.
All right. Well, I think that's not gonna work for now. Chris, can you hear us?
Well, we'll keep on talking, and we'll see if he can.
Join in, that's great.
If he can join in, that's wonderful. So anyway, the point is, I think that I think that a lot of people, they need, what works for you is going to be different than what works for somebody else. And there's a lot of people who they look at and see and say, oh, well, to be successful at real estate investing, you've got to be able to raise money from friends or family. To be successful at real estate investing, you've got to be you've got to be a realtor, so you can be the front line on every deal that comes across. In order to be an investor, you've got to, there's all these preconceived notions out there. You've got to be a good salesman, or you've got to have a big marketing budget. No, you just have to find your plan, find your niche, and work it consistently, and real estate can be successful for you.
Well, and not just that, Judah. Like the amazing thing about almost everything, most people, we look around, we see people living on TV, and we take that as the gospel truth of what's normal. And the reality is that just because everybody else does something one way doesn't mean you have to do it that way.
Correct.
You know? Just because, if you want to flip 50 houses a year, you got to do one. You got to figure out that first step, and you have to be strong enough not to know how to do 50 deals or 50 different ways. You have to be strong enough and competent enough to know that you just have to figure out the next step. It's funny because I was talking to a very close friend of mine the other day, and I was sharing one of my dreams, and like one of the things that is on my to-do list in 2021. And I said, we're going to purchase this many investment properties. We're going to be doing this and this and this. He's like, well, how are you going to get the money for that? Like these are pretty big numbers. And, I said, well, I'm not sure yet. We're going to figure that out we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But it's like, you got to get the idea first. You have to get the focus. You have to be willing to have enough faith to take that first step. And then you're in the step and it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. Then you know what you need to know. But right now, if you've never done a deal before, if you haven't gotten involved in it, you don't even know what you need to know. So you take that first step, you figure it out. You take the next step, you figure it out. And by the time you get to transaction number one, that's the hardest it's ever going to be.
Right. Here's how I tell people. I like to think of it as like running or lifting weights, right? Yeah. So step number one, if you're gonna, Josh, I knew you go to the gym on a regular basis and pump some iron. Step number one is go to the gym the first time and lift weights.
Yep.
Step number two, start like figuring out what amount of weight you can lift 10 times. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to do a set of 10. And if you're only doing a set of 2 or 3 or 5, you're not actually working out the right way. So step number 2 is figuring out what you can do a set of 10 is. Step number 3 is showing up 2 to 3 to 4 times a week at the gym. Step number 4 is adding weight. See, everybody says, I want to do 20 units a month, or I want to go from making $5,000 a wholesale to making $20,000 a wholesale. Those are steps down the road. If you were going to run, Josh, let's say your goal was to run, a 5K, basically 2.5 miles. Well, great. Start by going out and running the first day.
Yeah.
Step number 2 is go the distance you want. Step number 3 is run the distance you want.
Well, and
step number 4 is worry about getting the distance shorter. Let me make this with real estate. With real estate, do a deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then worry about doing a second and a third deal, and then worry about your pace. Like I'm trying to do 2 deals a month or 2 deals a quarter, or whatever your pace is, and then worry about your profit margin.
So
how can I beat up my contractor so I get a lower price, or how can I negotiate better so that I get more margin in here, or things like that. But don't try to do it all at once. People want to beat up their contractor and worry about their margin and worry about all these other things like that. Just get started.
Well, and Judah, so this is what I always it used to drive me crazy when we would do a lot of transaction, especially wholesale deals, right? Where you really do have a race to get to closing. Somebody might change their mind. Something might blow up, whatever.
You can't steal in slow motion is the expression I always use.
There we go. When we would get feedback from a mortgage company where they say something like, we have a 7 to 14 day turnaround time on mortgage payoffs. Like blanket, that's it. Used to drive me insane. And after 2 or 3 or 4 times doing this and arguing with people and trying to talk to a supervisor and harassing people and sending emails, you know what I realized? I'd spend 4 or 5 days just trying to get to a supervisor, and then I'd order the payoff and it would be there in 7 to 14 days.
Right.
And so whenever I started the process, that was the 7 to 14 days. So get that process started as fast as humanly possible, because if it's going to take you 7 days, if it's going to take you 4 hours, it doesn't start until you get started. So that 4 hours might take you 40 years to actually execute on.
Right.
You just got to get started. You just have to take the first step. That's it.
Yeah, Russ makes a good point here. Russ has always been kind of a running partner with me. You know, we kind of came up together. Russ is a really good dude. And Russ says, you know, baby doesn't start running. They crawl first, then they walk, then they run. And, you know, the other thing is I have 4 kids and I have taught them all successfully how to walk. But
you're the man.
When they, I know, isn't that great? But they all fell a time or two, right? The first time that the first one gets up and starts, you know, moving along the couch and then goes to take their first couple steps and they fall down on their butt, I didn't pick them up and pat their diaper and set them on the couch and say, hey, buddy, you're just not cut out to be a walker. You know, you might be many things in life, but walking's just not going to be for you. No, like you got to take action. And then you also got to understand you're going to have failures along the way too. Listen,
walking in the Weidman household, most of my kids couldn't walk till they were 2, but by that time they were like brawling because they every time they started walking, I'd push them over. So they knew that they had to battle back, right? So by 2, they're like ready for the push and the punch. They were ready. It took them a little longer to get started.
That's awesome.
True. Don't come to my
I always say to my kids, you know, I ask them, I say, guys, why is your daddy so hard on you? And they know to say back, because life is going to be harder. I say, that's exactly right. You know, so that's it's the second part of that I wanted to flesh out with Chris is there's like 3 elements to his story that I like. Is number 1, how young he got started. Number 2, how traditional of a route he took. You know, it doesn't have to be any magic to real estate investing. Just consistently work a boring plan and amazing things happen. And the third thing that I like about is how his strong work ethic from growing up on a farm really helped benefit him, and how it takes a strong work ethic to be successful in real estate.
Yep. That's awesome. I love it.
That's all I got.
Cool. All right. We'll be back here again tomorrow at noon. Thanks for joining us, everybody, today. If you enjoyed the program, make sure you push the like and share button. We will be back here at noon. Until then, go make some money. Judah, have a good day. See you guys.
Yeah.